Hello and welcome back to the Shed Geek Podcast. Here's a message from our 2025 studio sponsor. Let's be real. Running a shed business today isn't just about building great sheds. The industry is changing fast. We're all feeling the squeeze, competing for fewer buyers while expectations keep climbing. And yet, I hear from many of you that you are still juggling spreadsheets, clunky software, or disconnected systems. You're spending more time managing chaos than actually growing your business. That's why I want to talk to you about our studio sponsor, ShedPro. If you're not already using them, I really think you should check them out. ShedPro combines your 3D configurator, point of sale, RTO contracts, inventory, deliveries, and dealer tools all in one platform. They even integrate cleanly into our Shed Geek marketing solutions. From website lead to final delivery, you can quote, contract, collect payment, and schedule delivery in one clean workflow. No more double entries, no more back and forth chaos. Quoting is faster, orders are cleaner. And instead of chasing down paperwork, you're actually running your business. And if you mention Shed Geek, you'll get 25% off all setup fees. Check it out at shedpro.co/ShedGeek. Thank you, ShedPro, for being our studio sponsor, and honestly, for building something that helps the industry. Thank you for listening to part 2 of a 2-part series here at the Shed Geek Podcast. If you missed part 1, just go back to last week and listen for more engaging conversation here at the Shed Geek Podcast.
I don't want to keep being the one to talk here, so maybe you tell us about Shed Geek Consulting.
Well, the consultation, it's happened more organically than it has in terms of like going and getting a formal education. And like, to me, in many ways, it's the best form of consultation because it's, in the military, they always, you're always called the grunt whenever you've done all the work.
Right.
You weren't the officer, you were the NCO, the non-commissioned officers always kind of got the reputation as the blue collar section of the military versus the officers and the very white collar approach that they took in leadership. And so like for that reason, everybody respects a guy who's been in the trenches, it seems. They ultimately become first sergeant, most of them in the military, and they still answer to the officer in charge, but everybody knows that the person with the knowledge was the first sergeant. So, we've been in the trenches, but that doesn't mean that we have all the answers. That we're figuring them out as we go. But as we even began to, grow, a rentals, a finance, and e-commerce, and even a marketing side, that all came from a desire to help people, and then if you can find a way to help people and then monetize yourself, what's the term? Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. Anyway, I'm failing to come up with it. The dilemma. What is it called? Like a Hobson's something? What's the other? See, this is driving me crazy now because I can't remember it.
Now you've got a specific type of dilemma. Oh gosh, I don't know. I know about Hobson's razor. I don't know about Hobson's dilemma.
I'm struggling to think of it. That's terrible. It's where my mind has gone. It's like it's comparative to a dilemma. Anyway, let's use dilemma because our minds are failing us here. The dilemma is this. The dilemma is that like when you have a media agency that's overseeing the education and entertainment of an industry, the monetization of that came about sort of organically. I jumped into this to help people, to communicate, and to just do something. I did not set back on a big grand plan to figure out how to monetize this and retire off of this. As a matter of fact, it was a passion. Matter of fact, I've done it for free. I probably told the story on here beyond that, which was to actually purchase the equipment in hopes that it would make it. I spent $3,500 to get rolling, and was just like, I don't know, I want to do this. This sounds like fun. This seems exciting. I like the people. I like the industry. it's needed because people want to communicate, and we just gave them a way to do that. I know that there's other ways that you can do it, but the digital side, made a lot of sense too with the growth of just the way that the digital landscape has kind of touched our lives. So, as we were developing marketing, it became just apparent to me that really what we're doing is educating people so that we can sell something to them. And it's really something I'd been doing long before. People had been calling me since, my first year. Where do I get a website? Where can I go for it? Where can I go for that? And I'm just like, yeah, well, these guys do it. Well, we've had these guys on the show and they did. Next thing you know, you're helping people because you're becoming a resource because you're not thinking about monetization. But then there comes a point where you're like, hey, spending resources, and like
Right.
there's got to be something to come back. That's when the criticism gets introduced, right? Because now if you find yourself in a competing space, it's like, oh, you should just do the podcast, don't do these other things. And I'm like, well, a lot of people forget that I was in Rent-A-Own when I started the podcast.
Right.
I remember when people said, don't get into Rent-A-Own, you make a lot of enemies. And I was like, well, what if I can make a lot of friends instead? Like why can't I invite those people to the conversation? And I have. And some of them, will still come on, and likely some of them might not pick up the phone now. I'm not sure. But for the most part, everyone's been 90% of the time, it's like, yeah, this is a good thing. And we want to come talk about, use that platform to talk about it. And so like I've been using this for a long time, Cord. Whenever people say, well, um, how can you hardly be impartial or fair and balanced to, you know, an industry in which you also not only talk to, but that you service. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I don't know that I can be 100% impartial and 100% fair and balanced. Is that okay with you? And they're like, well, yeah, sure. It's just, it's got to be known. I'm like, let me tell you what I do though, is I am impartial enough and fair balanced enough to have my competitors come on and talk about their product offerings. Oh, and by the way, they even advertise with me sometimes. And you know what? I had a rent-out guy come up to me the other day whenever we was at the expo and said, hey, we're thankful for the leads we've gotten off of the podcast because makes me want to continue to advertise with you moving forward. I also saw that I was honest and left those leads alone if those leads came to
Yeah.
them because we set it up so that it did specifically go to them.
Of course.
We've had our fill, with rent to own. We've done really good this year. As a matter of fact, I think Stay at Home came on here and we kind of talked about our, doubling contracts. So it's like, hey, we were very comfortable with doubling. We didn't really have to go out and try to win the world, right? We
Yeah.
were satisfied. Anyway, I'm getting down a rabbit trail, but this is all what's kind of led me to the consultative space to be like, man, God's timing is just so impeccable. I started getting even some conversations over the last 6 months of people that was like, hey, I want to really get into this. And like, is there a way we can partner? Is there things that we can do? We've already identified, as a matter of fact, someone that we're working with in the consultative space, our friend Tyler Mahan, had spent all of his time at Better Barns and, was a columnist in the Shed Builder magazine, Shed Business Journal for years, and really has over 20 years of expertise. And by the way, we've already signed our first client on to that consultative space, and likely more will be signed on by the time this goes out because of the meetings we're having. And I think there's others that have talked about joining the group, and we're actively looking. We're trying to use our means, our direction, prayer, and our focus in conversation to say, can we identify folks who would want to be involved? So if you feel like you're one of those folks that it offers an area of expertise, and you want to be a part of that, we're looking for, varied experts, who can bring. So you've been here, you've done that, right?
Yep.
So you have something to offer, and then we just have to get into the weeds of like what the details are of what you want to offer, how you're going to offer that, and how we can partner together to offer the best consultative. And maybe that's in, C-suite services like you were doing with growth ops, or maybe that's in, 3D configurators or CRMs or lumber or who knows what. But we've talked about a potential peer group and really wanting to get a group of people together that are exclusive on a call so that we can shape and shift parts of the industry, or at a minimum parts of the industry that serves them best, how we can service them through communication. I believe knowledge is power, and I believe that speaking is important, but man, iron sharpens iron, and when you can get together and speak, it creates sort of a dynamic that is better. The dialogue always to me is better than a monologue. But and then I mean
well, and I think the brilliant part of the way that you've approached this, Shannon, to basically say, like obviously you have a ton of expertise across many different kind of service categories, across the industry. But to say, hey, let's go find niche experts, right? Let's go find, the most direct example that you just said, let's go find a guy who has 20 years operating a independent manufacturer dealer location, right? I mean, the listeners, have probably heard the interview that I did with him a few weeks back, and his thoughts on, how to continue to diversify and add products and services, to continue to grow, even outside of the traditional, multi kind of location model type of thing. And, just a wealth of knowledge in that category. But as you said, really, obviously we have people that we're talking to already, and that we kind of think would be good at this. But if you have some of that industry or niche specific knowledge, right? 618-309-3648. Call Shannon. Info at shedgeek.com. Shoot him an email. Right? We want to talk to you. Because we really want to formalize this network that provides so much value, right? Let's figure out a way that this knowledge can be shared, both in that personal consultative hour a week, whatever that looks like on a personal basis. But then to your point, Shannon, my goodness, what does it look like? The downside of a podcast versus a broadcast, right, is that we don't have that back and forth interaction directly. So let's get a peer group that has, 3 of the niche experts in this industry who pop in on a roundtable, right? And you can ask questions back and forth. And this is a continuing conversation, right? This isn't a once a year, panel, right? This is a conversation where, you talk about something, 1 week or 1 month, and then you come back and revisit. You talk about your results, and you talk about the freshest data, and you talk about the freshest, strategy and tactics. And, so really trying to formalize just all of that knowledge and expertise and real life, connectedness and value and value to the customer. And I just think it's awesome, man. You can tell I'm excited about it because I'm sitting here stealing your thunder on just how awesome how great you're doing it and putting it together. So,
hello, shed sellers. Let's take a moment to discuss the shed customer and meeting their expectations. I remember growing up in the neighborhood where a certain percentage of the houses had well-manicured lawns and well-manicured homes. These were the type of individuals who felt it was important to purchase a well-constructed home or vehicle, or maybe equipment to help maintain the quality of the item. As shed manufacturers, we seek to provide a well-built quality shed. We want the customer to feel satisfied that their hard-earned money has been well spent on a product that will last. At LuxGuard, we believe adding high-quality rubber flooring to your line of sheds makes sense to the customer and adds value the customer can appreciate. With each year, sheds are becoming more complex. The customizations we are seeing are virtually endless. LuxGuard not only gives a complimentary aesthetic appearance for their shed, but also protects the floor from spills and keeps cleanup simple. Offer your customer the customer service they seek with LuxGuard. At LuxGuard, we are committed to delivering exceptional customer service and innovative products to help our customers achieve their goals. We strive to meet the evolving needs of the customers. To speak with one of our ready-to-serve customer product specialists, simply call 336-468-4311. To see our product and view an installation video, just visit our website at luxguard.com. LuxGuard, the floor that lasts a lifetime.
Well, I want to make sure, to focus on too, we have been very, balanced with our approach to advertising or having people on the show. But we are into year 5, and you know what? We do have a business to operate here. And like I told someone else before, my family's my first ministry, and that's the ministry I've got to take care of. And that means making sure that they're well taken care of through finances, through emotional support, through spiritual support, and physical support, one that a dad and a father and a grandfather and a friend offers. And it's a business. That being said, man, I'm about as open book as you can be, Cord, which is both very beneficial and both very difficult to navigate. I've actually had some of the best minds in the industry say, this sounds like a statement of arrogance, but they've just, said, I'm impressed by the way you've walked a tightrope. And I'm like, well, for me, I don't think it's really been much effort. I think it's just been, I had a buddy when we were young, and he was like, when I was young, I was too dumb to be afraid. That's what landed him in a lot of trouble. Fear didn't do enough for me. Love is what conquered me. And he was like, I was too dumb to be afraid. And I would say that a lot of times I've just been too dumb to know that there's rules in business that you're not supposed to, cross over. And I'm like, you mean I can't go ask that guy? And I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell this story because it doesn't give anybody away. But I knew I was onto something. I specifically knew I was onto something when there was a very well-known person in the industry looking to put together a dinner, basically among several people who kind of served or crossovered into servicing one particular area of the industry.
Right.
And this is a person who I felt like had some really great resources and still does. And they called me and said, okay, I need you to name them for me. Who all are they? I want to contact them, and I want to bring them all together for a conversation. And I was like, you're asking me? He's like, oh, come on, you're the guy. You're the one who knows all of them.
And this is a dinner of competitors, I believe, if you're
a dinner of competitors.
Right.
And I was just so surprised because I was like, well, yeah, okay. And I didn't think anything about it. I'm like, well, this guy does this, and this company does this, and this is the way they operate. And, I'm just going through all this mental exercise or whatever without even thinking, wait a minute, that's a valuable opinion. You can, and that's just because my heart is to help first. Right. And if you have a chance to monetize that, then you're just blessed. But, it's always been, how can I help? How can I do more? And look, we're 5 years in, and this still seems to be an opportunity. So when I said earlier, we're fair and balanced on that, we start getting some of these preferred partners. Trust me, it doesn't have anything to do with personally. I don't want you to advertise, but if we offer some exclusivity, perhaps in an area, look, that's just the way it is. These people are believing in our program enough to put their money where their mouth is, and we want to support them. And we're vetting those situations heavily. So I just want to make sure to throw that disclaimer out there when it comes to advertising.
This is formalizing value, right? I mean, and it's no conceptually different than formalizing the value to your customer that you're framed up 16 on 2, right? Like it's no conceptually different than just saying, how do I take the value that I'm offering them, right, and package it in a way that actually adds up to a dollar figure, right? It adds up to the value that it actually provides. And so, it's business, it's formalizing it. But at the end of the day, I mean, I know you and I know your heart, and it's always going to be business done fairly. I have no doubt about that. I feel like both of us really go as far as is possible to be as fair in business as I just think we do. I think that we try to go above and beyond to be fair to competitors, to be fair to whoever it may be, service providers, to be fair to people and not to take advantage. And sometimes that's to both of our financial detriment, right? But I think that we believe in a higher power, a higher calling, and so it doesn't even it
It's
doesn't
God's
even cross
money
my mind,
anyway. It's God's money anyway, Cord. So,
right?
it rains on the just and the unjust. So like the way I see it, he takes care of the sparrows of the air. You know what I mean? He's going to take, how much more will he take care of us? He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Like me and you are able to pay our bills this month, and that's all that really matters. So I was making the comment that I was just reading in the book of Matthew, and we've probably since edited this because we had to take a quick bathroom break because we're long-winded. But I'm going to tell you something that happened in the middle of this podcast, Cord, as we were sitting here talking about this, is I got a messenger message. And I'm going to go ahead and read this messenger message because it'll basically keep the anonymity of the individual sort of at bay because that's what they prefer. And
Yeah.
it's actually one of my current advertisers who I hope stays on. It kind of talks about this very thing. This is an example of what happens on a daily basis. Hey, Shannon, I hope you're doing well. Would you happen to know any individual that is using the RTO Smart program for their own personal RTO contracts? Wanting to ask someone the pros and cons. I hate posting it out there in the Facebook world then I have so many advertisements for rental companies. We work with some of them already, or one of them. Thanks in advance. And I think that's just kind of harmonious of of the example of what we're sitting here talking about is I'm thankful, first of all, let's say that they ask. Second of all, you'd be surprised at how many private messages come in because things don't happen on Facebook. So what you see on Facebook is sometimes just a glimpse of kind of what other conversations begin to happen. But I was reading in the book of Matthew, and this is probably going to segue into two different ways, but I just wanted to talk about this. And I was reading to Deanna last night, and I'm just going to leave this here. Because when you talk about the last few months and just really trying to get through things, and we can even talk about why I stepped away for a little bit, because I think that's important. But I was reading in Matthew, and I was telling this to Deanna last night, in Matthew 27, 12, this is, kind of the resurrection story, or really the not the resurrection story, but really the crucifixion story here, where Jesus had been handed over to Pilate. And it says, now Jesus was, and I don't know what version this is, guys. I didn't type in ESV or NIV or
It's
New
all
King
God's word.
James or
Yeah.
But it says, now Jesus was standing there before Pilate, the Roman governor. Are you the king of the Jews? Asked the governor. But when the leading priest and, oh, wait a minute, that's actually an expanded. I didn't get into the whole thing there because I knew that was off there. But he says, are you the king of the Jews? And he says, you have said it. And I always thought that was interesting. Now I've done lost my whole place by expanding that. Here we go. And I always thought it was interesting that Jesus didn't say, yes, I am. He said, you have said it. And we can get into that because it'll preach. But the next verse says, but when the leading priest and the elders made their accusations against him, Jesus remained silent.
Right.
Don't you hear all these charges they're bringing against you? Pilate demanded. But Jesus made no response to any of the charges, much to the governor's surprise.
Introducing the Challenger, the revolutionary new shed mover that's taking the industry by storm. The Challenger features a touchless design, ensuring it only makes contact at the end of the skids and the bottom of the floor joists, so rest easy knowing your gable walls will remain pristine. Worried about reliability? Fear not, the Challenger is always up for the challenge and will not overturn or scuff your shed. Harness the power of innovative wireless technology. Remotely control the Challenger via your smartphone. No cell service needed. And guess what? The cell phone remote comes standard with every Challenger at no extra cost. Featuring floating forks, a 4-directional tilting mast, and sliding weight transfer, move the shed weight precisely where you need it to get ultimate traction. With self-loading capability, straight onto your truck, say goodbye to the need for a hydraulic carriage. The Challenger makes your job easy and more efficient. Choose from 2 machine sizes, 10,000 pounds and 15,000 pounds. Perfect for any job. Visit www.shedchallenger.com or email us at info@shedchallenger.com or call or text 828-220-3508 for more information. Experience the future of shed moving with the Challenger.
You know, sometimes in business, you just try to take chances and do different things. And sometimes they end well and sometimes they don't. But like we always want to put our best effort forward. And like in business or personally, I think I had someone come on recently and say, hey, Shannon, he's a pretty decent guy. And, I think I told you I get embarrassed by those things, and you've probably seen those things privately. You know what I mean? That's more embarrassing than it is kind of like celebratory for me. And I think a lot of that's probably got to do with, a myriad of things, probably going back all the way from my childhood all the way to today. And I think I can give a decent, excuse to, it's not even an excuse. I'm just so transparent. Like we put a show out once a week, sometimes twice a week. We've been doing that for, 52 weeks a year for 5 years. And you just almost can't step away even whenever you need to step away because you're just kind of responsible for being out there. And that's our value proposition. I'm not complaining about it. Those are offerings that we give to our advertisers. We want to make sure that they stay in front of people. We're trying to expand that now in year 5 to where we do a better job. We've already talked about that. But I think it's worth, since I'm trying to be, ride that transparency, conversation, is it's easy to just be like, sometimes you just lose a passion for something, and Cord, you kind of came on at exactly the right time because when you do this and things fail, or when you do this and things go sideways, or gosh, I could probably write a book or tell a whole podcast on, the ugliness of things that sometimes happen that you don't even talk about. It's just not edifying,
Yeah.
When I first started this, it was not a business, it was a passion. And I guess probably about a year ago, is whenever I really started to feel my passion wane, and then I also felt myself becoming very prideful in what we had done. We had built something good in multiple levels. Seemingly everything that we were doing was succeeding. And then bam, you have a year of different things you try that just didn't work out, and I'd prefer to just move on from them and learn from them and get back up, and move on. But it takes its personal toll on you. And, through that, some things come out that you can fill in the gaps if you want to. Some things came out, some trusted information I had given to somebody from a very traumatic event that had happened to me as a child. And I didn't share that. I didn't share that with anybody. Fill in the gaps, let your mind wander, call me as an individual if you really want to know more. But I don't want to speak on that. I haven't really talked about that with my family even. But it did land me, in a place where I thought, giving that away at the altar more than 10 years ago solved it. And I do think God takes that burden and those things, and he uses them for you and to your advantage. But that doesn't mean that I had ever really dealt with those. And actually found myself, Cord, it's just full transparency here. I guess we'll edit this out if we don't think it serves the audience the best in conversation. But it landed me in, attending, therapy for the first time in my life, seeking out someone to discuss both through cognitive or talk therapy, but also had someone in the industry who was pretty close to me who suggested EMDR therapy, which is what they use in um, um, soldiers and trauma, those with PTSD and traumatic experiences that have or whatever had happened in their lifetime. And so I'm actually in that process now. By the time this episode comes out, I'll be several, sessions into those different things. But what I found about it is it just kind of gave me like this new lease on life in many ways. It's kind of given me this refocus. And people say, hey, this is TMI. You don't want to share those things. And I'm like, man, I've been sharing my life on this podcast for 5 years. Like where I go, you go. You see what I'm doing, you go with me. And I'll tell you what it did was it actually, for those who don't believe in this or those that do, feel free to talk to me about it. But we discovered that there was an undiagnosed, ADHD, which is something, first of all, let me just say, when I went, I was like terrified that something like that would come out because it was like, what does that mean? And what's the stigma that goes along with it? Do people think that you're bonkers? You know what I mean? Like, what do people think? And when you start looking at all the trauma that's happened, that's undealt with in your life, and you realize how it creates defense mechanisms in you, it actually molds your entire life because you begin to mask or you begin to do different things. And I'll tell you what, I just found out so much about myself in this last 4 months. It's exciting. Actually, part of it has become there's different styles of ADHD. I know, again, some of the audience might not believe these things exist, but I'm a firm believer because I can't watch a video now that doesn't resonate with me on things that I've done or do my whole life. And mine in particular is what they call inattentive ADHD. So it's a form of basically neurodivergent autism, which means a couple of different things, which means sometimes I'm very obsessive compulsive. So sometimes I can get on a thought and then think it through and then think it through again and then talk about it and then think it through again. And what happens?
I thought that was podcasting. Is that not podcasting?
What happens is you get very distracted. You get very distracted. But what we have found is that like a people interest is specifically, what drives me is like interested in people's stories. Well, I've got report cards from the third grade that said, Shannon could do better in school. He's a bit of a daydreamer, and that's because you begin to get bored. And I wasn't hyper, so it's not a attention deficit. The problem it's an attention surplus because your mind is on 20 or 30 different things all at the same time. So it feels like a group of mules pulling your mind in different directions. So you're trying to like focus on one thing. So it's not a deficit of attention as much as it's too much attention. And mine didn't show up in a way of hyperactivity like you see with kids who run and bounce off walls and all that. Instead, mine was very inattentive, which means I turned into daydreaming or I turned into thought. And anyone who's been around me knows that I will, talk one specific thing through an hour if necessary, because I'll just think it through very profound. So why am I telling you all that? I'm telling you all that because cord filling in has been able to give me a break. And I've kind of been able to hide the fact that I was kind of struggling over the last 3 to 4 months to be excited to come into work and to do these things again. And then boom, prayer, some Bible reading, and some therapy. And the next thing you've started to see in the last week or two. Even Eric told me yesterday, he's like, man, you're like the old you now. And I was like, I know, for 3 or 4 months, I've been checked out. But really, for the last year, I've just been kind of like going through the motions.
Well, I mean, I can just say that the fire is in your belly. And like you say, whether it's the last 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it is, it's awesome. And the progress and the all the things that are going on, around here, and the things we've talked about earlier in this conversation, are honestly just a testament to you sort of like being able to have that time, number one, and take that time. But now coming back, like, I mean, similar to Eric, I feel like, Shannon's back and you are back and, back on the podcast and not just back in person, but back in spirit. And man, it's awesome. It's awesome to be
There's
around.
So much more things that we want to do too, and we'll end the podcast here to be a 2-part series, but creating an actual media group, not only expanding this podcast and turning it into something hopefully special and our presence in the industry or what the brand means as a whole, but even beyond that, Cord, like we've talked about doing, I've talked for a long time about doing a recovery podcast because of my, involvement with prison ministry and how that rolls over into addiction and recovery, even to the point of wanting to create a recovery center here, in our hometown, which is very much needed.
Are you swimming in leads but struggling to close the deal? It's time to turn those leads into profits with Making Sales Simple, the ultimate sales training program designed specifically for shed sales professionals. At Making Sales Simple, we understand the challenges you face, overwhelmed by inquiries, unsure how to follow up, and missing opportunities that can boost your bottom line. Our proven techniques help you and your team master the art of connecting with customers, building trust, and closing deals like never before. Whether you're new to the industry or a seasoned pro, this training will sharpen your skills, increase your conversions, and drive your business to new heights. Don't let those leads go cold. Invest in your team's success today. Making sales simple, because every lead deserves a closer.
Me and you kind of get along on our talk about community. Involvement in community and creating another podcast that is, and I've been talking about it for like 2 or 3 years. Right. And it's like, hey, it's time to move on this. And I thought, man, does that mean I'm shutting this chapter down? And I've really been struggling with asking God that for the last, 6 months, but man, the last 4 months have been heavy stuff. And it's like, God, it's your podcast, it's your money, it's your time. What do you want me to do with it? Help me to be a willing vessel. And I'll tell you what, man, I've got a new fire to just go out and say, wait a minute, let's go out and hammer this thing for the next 5 years and let's see what we can do, because you don't have to be embarrassed of the fact that you want to help people. And you also don't have to be embarrassed of the fact that you want to turn that into a financial inflow and for your family. Again, your first ministry to take care of. So I hope I'm not doing too much information today, but I want you guys to know, if you have any questions about why I might get lost on a thought on the podcast or go down a road, what did some of the people said? You ask a question and it's like, you didn't let them answer. You answered it for them. And I'm like, I know. I'm getting better. I promise you. But this has been one of the most life-changing years for me. And all of this started with basically complications from a medical procedure, routine medical, procedure, which was a colonoscopy that ended up, with, basically internal bleeding because of ruptured uh,
Lesion.
lesion.
Yeah.
Landed me in the ICU, was in for 3 days, lost about 8 pounds. They had to go in and put some staples in. And when all of that happened, it changed the course of everything for me because it really woke me up. And then, obviously I ended up finding out more about myself because I had what they call a vasovagal response, which is basically I passed out. So then they gave me a blood infusion. They thought because I was losing blood. Heart doctor gave me did all the stuff, right? The EKGs, did a ultrasound on my heart, but then they did an MRI, CAT scan, and everything that you could probably, get done for me. Your dad would be proud. They done it all.
You were in his unit, actually.
I was.
Lourdes ICU. That's right.
I was. And I'm going to tell you what, man. It was intense. But the doctor came back and started talking about the sympathetic and asympathetic nerve and response and why I do what I do. So basically, I've passed out probably 10 or 12 times in my life, if not more. And I basically go into this vagus response, this vagus nerve, basically is your fight or flight. So you know how some people like attack? I'm like a fainting goat. Basically, when I get overwhelmed, just I'm gone. But a lot of that plays into the central nervous system that kind of comes back to some of the stuff they're finding out about trauma and PTSD and things like that. So, hey, look, this is a very touchy, personal thing to me, but at the same time, man, I've just felt like, hey, it's better to own it and just be like, hey, this makes sense now as to why, some things, those who deal with anger, like I'd love to do a podcast on this. I've done the biggest deep dive into ADHD I think that you can do over the past 4 weeks because I went in saying, no, I'm not, because I don't want you to medicate me to them saying, hey, nothing's saying we have to medicate you, like, let's see if we can get through this without that. Anyway.
Well, there's so much misunderstanding. I think that's a great idea. An episode on even just like the different neurodivergent, the spectrum of autism. I mean, my goodness gracious, right? Like how misunderstood is that? And so yeah, I think that would be, and that's, I think the type of stuff maybe that little Friday bite-sized episodes or whatever topical type of stuff, maybe that allows us to do that, and still give good information that maybe isn't shed information, but, I think at this point, just about all of us, have someone in our life, someone that we care about, whether it be cousins or just acquaintances. I know one of my very good friends that I grew up with, she has 2 sons. Now they're more profound on the spectrum, but my goodness, I mean, just the best kids, and so she has that business, about an inclusion. But anyway, maybe something like that would be a good little Friday episode. And I think that the people take a lot out of that, even if it's not, we can talk about shed sales and we'll do plenty of it because me and you
burnout
are passionate about it.
The Steel Kings just did an episode on burnout because burnout in business is real and taking care of your mental health is a real thing. I can remember talking with Steve Byler about, how things got really dim for him, whenever he was running his dad's business and, how it can overtake you. So I thought, God takes the things that are meant for harm and does good things with them. So for me, rather than being embarrassed or shying away from it, it helped answer questions for me over the past 45 years of like why I would, previously would fall into, anxiety or depression. A lot of this is hereditary. I could tell you stories about my dad for days,
Right.
but we just, we haven't went down that. Come from a broken family. Look, all of this is like, what does this have to do with sheds? It doesn't. It has maybe more to do with the host, but man, it's went from I want to interview people to somehow becoming this shed geek character to where your actual life is on display in many ways. And I mean, you've seen the phone calls and the text and the emails. Sometimes it's hard to circumvent that. It's hard to navigate through, all of these treacherous relationships. And,
Of course.
the truth is, I had someone in the industry tell me about a very traumatic event in their life, unsolicited. And that kind of, surprised me in itself. But in a way, it didn't, because I used to work in the faith-based drug and alcohol rehabilitation, counseling side, where people would tell me, and yet I had this own thing that I was dealing with. Anyway, dude, it's been beautiful. Like, I'm saying all of this, not as a doom and gloom. I'm saying all of this as, dude, I feel just back, Cord. I
Yeah.
feel like myself again, and I haven't felt that way in a year, and especially over the last 4 months. So while 2025 was a beast of burden, 2026 is getting ready to hit. And I'll tell you what,
Growth, growth,
growth,
growth, right? Full steam ahead.
full
Like,
steam ahead.
the fire that has been relit in your belly, I feel like the Shed Geek office, the people, me, Deanna, Troy, Aaliyah, who are working here, and it's not just you, right? Like, you, that has now spread, right? And I think Shannon is on fire personally for the Lord, and I think Shed Geek is following suit, right? And it's time to grow. It's time to um, do all the things. You know what I mean? We've only got one life, and
That's
and we
right.
need to please Him with it, right?
That's right.
So if we can maximize the amount of help to everyone, then that's what we'll do. So
That's right.
I love it,
Dude,
man.
let's pray it out of here. I'm looking forward to more of these episodes that we're going to put out on Friday, where we can almost just kind of pull back the curtain, and whether it's us or someone else, and just get real, and just be like, hey, man, this is good stuff. This is
Right.
good conversation.
Right.
We do a lot
Yeah.
of this off the air, but I'm like, who's the brave soul willing to come on, right? Who's the
Yeah.
brave soul willing to talk about those difficult things? Anyway, um, shall I pray?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to sit here and just speak to a group of people who would find what we say um, decent enough, that they'd be willing to chime in and to listen, and hopefully they'll be better for it, not just because we're rambling, but because we're trying to add value. Your word says that iron sharpens iron. So as we continue to talk, we hope that we always lead towards your goal, the Great Commission, to go and save souls, and to build a kingdom there in heaven, full of people for you. We thank you that you sent your Son, um, for to atone for our sins. We know we're not perfect, but we
Mhm.
know who is, and we're just so thankful that you would look down upon us with mercy, and with grace, and with kindness, and with love, and hope that you show us how to be those things too. We thank you that we can talk openly and freely in a country. We thank you that we
Amen.
can talk openly and freely about things that trouble us, things that are difficult. And Lord, even the naysayers, even those that don't feel value through that conversation, we'd ask that there'd be something that we'd say that would still touch them in some way, that would lead them to you, or to at least show the sovereignty that you possess, that does steady our mind, that gives us peace beyond all understanding. God, we just ask that you continue to light this fire in business, this fire in spirituality. We thank you for the recent Man Up Adventure Camp that I got to attend. Lord, the exciting things that you did there. Help that grow, help it double, triple. Lord, ask that you continue to bless those folks who have been faithful stewards of just being a willing vessel. Ask that you continue to bless us here at Shed Geek and all the listeners. We're just so thankful. We're just so thankful that you would give us a platform, that people would listen So help us to be mindful of that every time we step up to the microphone, that we share your word, that we share the wisdom we've learned through your guidance. Help us to be better in business. Help us to be better as an industry. Let us never shrink in a moment and an opportunity to just say, Lord, we do fail and we have failed. But in all of that failure, we seek you. You are the one that we ask to make the ship right, to turn things around. Ask that you'd soften hearts that are hard today. We'd ask that you would make hearts bold that are timid. God, I just thank you for all that you've done in my life and all that you've done through this business and this industry. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Appreciate
Amen.
you, brother. Love you, man. You know
Love
I do.
you.
And excited for what 2026 is going to be here at the office. I really am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you,
Till
Shannon.
next time. Yes, sir.
Thanks again, ShedPro, for being the Shed Geeks studio sponsor for 2025. If you need any more information about ShedPro or about ShedGeek, just reach out. You can reach us by email at info@shedgeek.com or just go to our website, www.shedgeek.com, and submit a form with your information, and we'll be in contact right away. Thank you again for listening, as always, to today's episode of the Shed Geek Podcast. Thank you and have a blessed day.